Welcome to the Solemn Vanguard channel. Today we are having a look at my Granblue premium deck that I used to fight against Chris from Different Fight. If you haven't seen that fight yet, it's legendary. You should check it out. It's on my channel. Now, beyond that, don't forget to pick up your favorite zero damage gaming playmats as well as face masks. Some new ones were actually added, including this one, which I think you will like quite a lot. Without further ado, let's get into this profile. So we start off with our 4 Cocaidos. Now, obviously, we do not have Nitros yet. We are currently right after Premium Collection, still before Silver Dust Blaze, and so the Nitro set just isn't out yet, so this is the best thing we have. It's still just an amazing ride-up. The fact that you can literally go ride, Counterblast 1, Mill 4, find some stuff, make a field, attack, it's just really strong. Even when Nitros drops, it is not mega confirmed that Nitros is strictly better. You know, Nitros has plenty of perks, but it's not strictly better. Because this setting up the drop is just a huge deal. Whereas for Nitros, you still need to see some mills or call from hand before really seeing value. And so you plus less, whereas Cocaidos is literally just pop and go. Next up, we have 4 Skull Dragon. As long as Megiddo is the best finisher in the deck, we will always stick with 4 Skull Dragon. If we one day enter a meta where we don't have time for Megiddo, or maybe there's an even better combo, sure, this will go down, but as long as we have the Megiddo play, this is a 4-off. Then we have 1 Nightstorm, the best attack extender in the deck. Even though it's an awful ride, this card is just way too good to pass up. It's part of the Megiddo combo, it's part of the big attack chains you can do on Obadiah turn, and so you have to have it. Next up, we have 4 Grenache. This card is so good. I've said it so many times. This is the best card that has been printed in V. Not necessarily in the strongest clan, and so it doesn't always get to shine. But this effect, given the current speed of Vanguard, is insane. The fact that you can endlessly recur cards and just always have access to everything, essentially access to your deck, because your drop zone is your deck in Granblue, that's just nutty. Next up, one of the worst cards in the deck, Ruin Shade. This card is so bad, it does so little, but it's the best we have. I mean, it mills, sure, but like, if you don't ride it, if you don't see it on turn 2, it does nothing. If you do see it on turn 2, it does almost nothing. So like, first thing to be cut. I've been very vocal about this as well. I think Ruin Shade is just a really shit card, and the only reason it's still in is because we haven't gotten anything better. But compared to the value other clans have in their triple rares, oof, this card sucks. Then 1 Columbard, again another attack extender. If your Nightstorm goes to damage, you're very happy to still have access to this. Also, if you're doing an Obadiah turn and you're trying to be aggressive, you can combo off with this and Nightstorm, calling each other into your final Skull Dragon, which is just 1 extra attack, and that may be the attack you need to win the game. It's also an interceptor, so if you're very afraid of dying next turn, this is the attack extender you call, knowing that this won't die because it doesn't get hollowed, and then you have 1 5k extra shield. Can come in clutch. Then we have 1 Ghost Chip. This card is insane. Like 24k, kills itself to draw a card. Basically, if you need to push, you do Skull Dragon plays with Nightstorm and Columbard. If you need to survive, you do Ghost Chip plays with Nightstorm and Columbard. I don't see us cutting this card anytime soon. We really want access to that. If we see it on a Cocaidos turn, that's insane. That's just plussing and pushing at the same time. And if we don't, then we just fetch it off Obadiah. It's a great one-off. Then 1 Cannoneer. This card is still in, because for quite a while Riviere has been a thing. If you want to make the Riviere matchup easier, you really want to call this so you can pop the Tra that's inside the force marker, and that way they either have to have another one in hand or their turns just become trash. Because as long as Riviere isn't doing Megiddo plays, they rely on hard drawing Tra, and so it's very good to just pop those. There's other matchups where you like popping things, but that's like the main one for me. Next up, and this has been a new addition, this is Dancing Cutlass. I added this because Bad Bounty is now a thing. Essentially, Bad Bounty turns are quite CB heavy, because if you have a call creator like Columbard and Nightstorm, that's a CB. Bad Bounty is a CB. And also, Bad Bounty doesn't revive anything, so you're not reviving Grenache either. So all our turns are always free, but Bad Bounty turns are not. The meta has become so aggressive that I actually don't want to waste calls on Grenache if I don't have to. I don't want to waste calls on counter charge when I want to be using those calls on Greed Shades and Ripple Banshees and stuff like that. For that reason, I wanted more CC that I could call after my other act skills. So, you know, with Obadiah, I can make a field. One of those things can be a Grenache just for the utility, and then I can replace it with a Cutlass, get my CC, and still have a booster. You also saw this, by the way, in the fight with Chris, where I first did some Grenache shenanigans, and then I got a Vanguard booster after that. Another really good reason for running this is that Romario sucks ass. I've said this for so long, Romario and Ruinshade are the worst triple rares ever. Holy shit, Romario does so little for so much. Costs CB, so he opens you up for being CB denied. He doesn't even make very good numbers. And now that, and we'll get to that, we actually have better boosters than Romario. Romario's just out. Like, I've been on 2-1 Romario for the longest time, just because he's like a really magic number booster for if you can't rival Banshee because you don't want to use a soul. And now that that's gone, whew, nah, Cutlass. Another interesting thing about Cutlass is that since he revives himself, this actually helps you make a board on bad bounty turns, you know. So you can call something from hand like a Grenache or a trigger or whatever, and then Cutlass can revive itself. That doesn't take any hand, and that way you still have, you know, a body that also then happens to CC you. But yeah, Romario sucks. Romario has always sucked. Just like with Ruinshade, it has always been a case of we don't have anything better. But soon we'll have plenty of stuff better, so I'm very, very excited for that. But yeah, this replaced Romario entirely for me. Then we have 3 of this boy. We'll get to the specifics later, but this card is really good. You can revive it if you're Nora. If you place it, you can draw and ditch, but the thing you ditch can also be the quick shield, so that way you're just getting endless value upon value upon value. Then we have 2 Ripple Banshee. She pluses. I don't know what else to say, really. She pluses. She pluses so damn much. It's so important. It's easy for us to get too much soul, because the only way we get rid of soul is essentially G-guards, and we do have the crits that go to soul in order to draw cards, and so we can have this fat soul. And that's basically the way you should be looking at it. That's cards that you lose that should be in the drop zone. So your Skull Dragon is actively becoming smaller the more soul you get. And so the fact that this card empties your soul and draws cards is really, really good. Then we have 1 tier. This was a bit of a secret weapon I had been running for quite a while already. Just the fact that you can flip Cray Elementals off your Obadiah. I already ran Seabreeze for that. I also ran a Galleon and Dismal, which I could flip off my G-guards. And so this way, tier was essentially a second Grenache that emptied my soul, that worked in main phase, that worked from hand. It was just so good. Like, someone who's very good could play around Granblue and go like, ha, now he can't do this and now he can't do that. And then I would go like, okay, tier, and now I can do everything. Fuck you, and win. I did that so often. This card is insane. 1 Honolly. This is to get rid of whatever deck does insane multi-attacks. I'm not gonna lie, this is probably the worst card in the deck. I already said that about Ruinshade, actually. But yeah, like, so many people say like, oh, Honolly can stop the multi-attack and blah, blah, blah. But the more you do the math, the more you notice like almost no deck actually goes over this amount. And if they do, they're probably gonna kill you anyway and pay that CB gladly because they're gonna win. Also, loads of decks can pop it. You have to call it and cost a CB and like, and that's also like a utility call. This could have been a Ripple Banshee to draw you a card, and maybe that's better than actually reducing the amount of attacks. Could be a Grenache, so it could get access to all these other things. It could be a piece that actually gets big and then helps you push. It could be so much more because we only have 5 circles and we need to use those well with Obadiah. This is such a shit card. But yeah, some matchups, this deck just needs to see it, and so we still run it, but it's definitely like the card that consistently does nothing. Then we run 1 Tempest Sphere. Oh, baby. So the way you need to be looking at Granblue is you ride up into your Cocytus, revive some stuff, and then your first stride has to be at GB2 already. Because Obadiah, when the only flip in your G-zone is the flip he does himself, only revives 2. You literally are striding something that does Cocytus' regular Vanguard skill. That is so bad. So you need to be at GB2 when going into your first Obadiah. That means you need to find G-Guard or you need to Tempest Sphere. And the way I see it, this is essentially my 5th heal. Because if I ride up the Cocytus first and I can't find the heal, but I can find this, I'll be very happy. Because that means my coming Obadiah turn will revive 4 instead of 2, and that's exactly what we need. Apart from that, this can also find heals, so that way you can G-Guard and live even more. Overall, it's just a very good card to get our GB live, which is exactly what we need when trying to go for much bigger Obadiah turns. turns. Also, Greed Shade can fetch it. So if you mill this of Cocytus, you can actually fetch it back with Greed Shade. And so we actually are one of the decks that has easier access to it than others. Then we have one Grenache, still so free. If you think, damn, this game is gonna last a while, just always pop a Grenache in your lineup, and that way you know you'll have endless resources as far as countercharging goes. Then we have this boy. People have not been respecting this card for so long. It actually has barely ever left my deck. Maybe I've done like some deck profiles in the past where there was no Chappie, but honestly, whenever I played Granblue legit, there was always a Chappie. The reason is, even though Obadiah can choose 5, being able to see it quicker than Stride is a big deal. Now you can say, oh, but you only run 1. Yes, but this 1 copy is essentially a second copy of every 1-off, and is a third copy of every 2-off, or is a 5th copy of my Cocytus. So what I will often do is, my opening hand will not have the Cocytus ride, I'll have the Skull Dragon. I can't guard with that Skull Dragon. I don't want to G-assist in a Cocytus either. So my opponent attacks me, I throw my Chappie, mill my Cocytus, and then when I ride into my whatever and call a Greed Shade, I now have my Cocytus. If I desperately want to see Ghost Chip on my Cocytus turn, that's my second Ghost Chip. If I'm in a matchup where I know Grenache will be key, and I don't want to risk losing it to damage because it's that key or something, this is my second Grenache. And so essentially this just makes the deck more consistent and speeds it up, and all my one-offs are suddenly a slight bit safer. The other reason is the fact that this guy lets me mill in my opponent's turn with Nora. So if I draw him, cool, that's a mill. Then I G-guard, that's another mill. I G-guard again, that's another mill. That's 3 mills in my opponent's turn. That could be the difference between hitting a crit and not hitting a crit on your coming drive check, because you're thinning just slightly more. And once you're getting close to deck out, that thinning matters. That's actually the suboptimal play I did against Chris that no one could catch. Essentially, I should have guarded with this first, milled something, then Nora'd it out to mill something again, instead of PGing it away and then milling, because this would have upped my critical trigger chance on my Megiddo turn by like 20%, maybe more. I should do the math, but essentially there's no reason to not almost deck yourself out when you know you need to win that turn anyway. And just having that option to make your deck just slightly thinner is huge when your deck is already tiny. The difference between 5 cards in deck and 4 cards in deck right before your drive check, your last drive check, is huge if you are taking away a normal unit and you know there's crits in that stack. It's such a huge difference. And so this just allows me to map my deck slightly more. I am able to count, like, I have this amount of cards, so I can do this amount of draws this turn, this amount of mills, this amount of drive checks. Next turn I can take this amount of damage, and then I can still mill this amount with Nora, and then I know next turn I will have exactly this deck and thus exactly these drive checks. That is huge. And this card is the only thing that allows you to do that. I used to run 2 copies, but now because of Tempest Sphere, I'm down to 1. Next up, we have our premium collection crit. Of course, striding for free. Why wouldn't you? Some people could say like, hey, but you already run 9 grade 3s. Doesn't that make striding super easy anyway? Especially because Skull Dragon, the only way to get rid of it is basically striding. No, not really. Because the first time you Obadiah, you are already milling your Nightstorm and all your Skull Dragons out anyway. By the time you get to second stride, your deck has maybe 3 grade 3s and they're all Cocytus. And you don't want to throw away Cocytus because that's your Megiddo fodder. So these cards are actually huge for Granblue, even though we run a high amount of grade 3s. Because all those grade 3s instantly leave our deck and we gotta save the Cocytus for the actual ultimate stride. Next we have this Banshee. Of course, a great card. Also got better because of Premium Collection, because Tempest Sphere turns her on quicker. And that 10k plus draw is so big in the early game or even a Cocytus turn when people didn't really have time to build their hands yet. Also, this can always be a call of your Obadiah and just turn into a free draw when you're missing soul. So, you know, the soul management in Granblue is actually pretty important. You know, people think, oh, it's drop zone management, but it's soul as well. Because if your soul is too big, your Skull Dragons get too small. If your soul is too small, you don't have access to Nora and Ripple Banshee anymore. So it's a constant balancing act between calling this or Ripple Banshee to draw and then count out how much soul you will actually need, while ensuring that your soul is as empty as possible by the time time you go for the kill turn. Next up, we have 3 vanilla crits, and then we have 1 draw PG. So this is why we only ran 4 of the grade 1 PG, because I want to fit 1 of this. Why 1 of this? This is a bit cheeky, but essentially in a shop challenge that Chris, different fight, hosted, he ran this Dimension Police deck at one point running Glory Maker. That's a card that turns off grade 1 PGs and protect markers, and I was running an OTT deck with grade 1 PGs. And so game 1, he beat me by going Glory Maker and just completely destroying me that way because I had no PGs. I had grade 1 PGs and protects and neither worked. And so I was afraid that he would be running Glory Maker in his build again because he knew I would be playing Granblue. And so I was like, damn, how am I gonna not lose to Glory Maker? So I put in the 1 draw PG just in case, because I didn't want to just randomly get critted and Glory Maker to death. And so this way I would always have access to this card with Grenache to not get Glory Makered. Still, it can be useful to run some draws in this age where everything is so fast. It's much harder to deck out with Granblue. It's also nice to recur some resources on bad bounty turns. So for the first time in forever, I'm actually not opposed to running like 2 or maybe 1 draw PG. Also, the meta is now so wide open. It's very possible that a certain deck has a guard restrict that a grade 1 PG doesn't like to see. It's not bad, but the fear of getting Glory Makered was definitely also part of this. Then we have our 4 heals. Ah, beautiful. Again, they're V-triggers because V-triggers are broken. And then we have 1 Captain Knight Kid, of course. Free draw, quick shield. Quick shield turns into a card of Dolph and Grenache. Granblue is one of those decks that just gets a lot of value out of a quick shield, so we're always happy to see our V starters. Next up, we have 2 Obadiah. I would like to play 3, but then again, if you're needing your 3rd Obadiah, you can probably go Galleon, the GB8 anyway, or Megiddo. So 2 has been fine, but I can see an argument for running 3. Then 2 Cyclones. Now, I got a lot of questions about this one. People were like, you don't even run the vanilla engine. Why are you running Cyclone? Well, it's quite simple. We flip stuff. You know, we have Obadiah, which flips whatever. We have Tempesphere, which flips whatever. So we flip cards. And whether you flip a fancy Granblue unit or a Cray Elemental, you're not getting bonus points for running Granblue units and flipping them. But you are getting bonus points for flipping Cray Elementals. Why? Because tier, first of all, CCs more if they see Cray Elementals. So while we used to flip Sabreeze, now we flip this. And also this makes our vanilla triggers way bigger. So when both are flipped, which is easy as hell, that's just 2 Obadiahs or an Obadiah and a Tempesphere, we have 15k vanilla triggers. So if you're gonna do a kill turn with Obadiah because you somehow didn't have access to Megiddo and you need to win right here and now, you want your entire back row to be vanilla triggers. And we run them. We run 7 of them. We have the crits, 3 off, and then we have 4 heals. So if you make your entire back row those, called off Obadiah, that's actually 20,000. So we have 20,000 power boosters. That's huge. That's bigger than Romario could ever be. That's bigger than Ripple Banshee. That's bigger than all of those. These are the biggest boosters we have access to. And so suddenly, just by including this in the deck, not even like doing fancy vanilla stuff, we don't run vanillas beyond a couple triggers, just by including it, we now increased the power ceiling of the deck. Beyond that, if you want to do a bad bounty turn, suddenly every vanilla trigger in your hand turns into a good piece as well. Previously, if we did a bad bounty turn, okay, cool, so you swing with your 14k Grenache and then your Vanguard swings are big. Cool, your Vanguard swings are fine, but just 2 Vanguard swings and shitty rearguards, you might as well play Overlord. We need higher power rearguards, and as long as we don't have V Colombard, our vanilla triggers are actually high power rearguards. Like, don't forget, when your vanilla trigger is a 15k and then you have a 14k Grenache in front of that, that's a 29k column. If you have a 29k column together with 2 big Vanguard swings, that really starts to count. And so suddenly this, together with Cutlass making a free field, you can make a good bad bounty turn in this deck even without Nitros, even without V Colombard. It's just another option. Suddenly we just have strong, easy to make fields on bad bounty turns that we previously couldn't. So that is why I run 2 of these Cyclones. I don't run 3 because room is an issue, and beyond that, it's very hard for us to flip more than 2. Now next up, the star of the show. Oh, bad bounty. The card I got to reveal from Bushiroad, still very, very thankful for that. I love this card so much. So this is our Vanguard restanding next stage type of thing, but from the drop zone, so still really part of the team. I didn't use it in the fight against Chris because I didn't see the situation being right for it, but it is a very powerful card, especially against our worst matchups. You know, previously, Gridora, Link Joker, they were awful matchups for us because we were so rearguard reliant. Once they locked us down, That's it. Whereas now, we can play that Overlord-ish game. Beyond that, Granblue also has a mediocre-ish Overlord matchup because they can just Denial Griffin our Skull Dragon and our Nightstorm, and that's GG. Whereas they can't Denial Griffin this. So I noticed when playing against new Overlord, I had quite some issues until I realized, hey, I can spam Bad Bounty and play their game better than them because I have protect markers and they don't. So that's a really, really big deal. Because of the Cyclone inclusion, we can now do pretty good Bad Bounty turns even without Nitros and Columbard, and of course it'll get even better once we add those in. It makes our bad matchups really good, and so I'm definitely running 2, but running 1 would be acceptable. It's relatively rare that you'd go into 2, but still, I'm very terrified of our bad matchups, you know. Like, this deck has so many good matchups against some of the best decks in the meta, and then randomly losing to rogue stuff doesn't feel good. This is kind of like our insurance policy. Then we have 1 Ballon Arena. Oh, World's Ballon Arena. What a beauty. So I first ran 2 because that was the only way we had a slight glimmer of hope against Ghidorah and Link Joker. Now with Bad Bounty, we have more glimmer of hope. But yeah, this one is still necessary for those matchups. I noticed the best move is essentially doing a Ballon Arena first, so you can then stride and rewrite for free the rest of the turn. So you go Bala, pressure them quite a bit already, maybe even kill them, lol. Maybe they'll throw some PGs already because they're scared, and then Bad Bounty gets even better. This is really our anti-Ghidorah, anti-Link Joker package, but you could definitely bump up Ballon Arena to 2 for that as well. I did that in the past. I could see me doing that again, we'll see. But yeah, mostly for our bad matchups together with Bad Bounty. This is really our big insurance policy, let's say. Then we have 1 Galleon. This could turn into a 3rd Obadiah, honestly, but this is like a freer, better Obadiah. If you're going for your 3rd Obadiah, I find it hard to imagine that you haven't been G-guarding as well, and so it's very likely you can just go into this. It's bigger numbers, it doesn't cost CB, there's just so many pros to that. But again, if you're very scared, you could also run a 3rd Obadiah. Then the star of the show, Megiddo. This is still our best finisher, you know, for all of the utility that this deck has, all of the defense, all of the offense, all of the everything really, just so much control in this deck. That is still the inevitability we push towards, you know. So we have all these resources to push, we have all these resources to survive, we have all these resources, but at the end of the day, this is still the strongest play we have access to, and we use everything else to push towards this. Being able to do Megiddo, 4 Skull Dragons plus a Nightstorm, that's usually GG. Then 1 Sea Breeze, this is just to randomly kill people, you know. Some decks you just want to grade 2 game a little, and then suddenly go right up, Nightstorm, Skull Dragon, boom, boom, bam. You can use this after using the Act of Cocytus, turning on GB that way and just kill him. Then we have 1 Deep Corpse Dragon. This is just the most generic G-guard. Like, if you ride up Cocytus without striding and you pass turn and you G-guard, this is usually the thing you're going for. Sets up your drop, 20k, easy G-guard. Usually you're not yet at the drop zone amount to do this, or you don't have the GB1 yet to do Nora, and so this is just, you know, this is the most basic G-guard for that situation. Then we have this one. This gets big, but usually later in the game. Generally, this thing is only in here for Luard, because those matchups are a bit more grindy, and you may not be able to go Nora, because, you know, damn, they'll have another turn, and I'll be out of G-guards. Then we have Dismal, haha, fuck you, Dark Irregular, fuck you. If you don't know about this, this is a trick that I guess I invented, but I'm sure other people on the planet also. But this is the thing I first brought it to light, and that's the fact that Brewfuzz is a forced skill. You can't choose not to use Brewfuzz when it's your Vanguard, if you reach the cost. And if you're doing a Gusty turn, NLK plus Brewfuzz, you already have the requirement of 2 grade 3s in your soul, and so by default you need to retire something. So that means if Gusty is doing their combo play, they attack with Vanguard, and nothing on your field can be retired, they have to retire something on their own field. And that means they can't double NLK anymore. So what you do is, if something is left out on your side of the field, they attack with rear guard, because they always do. They need to attack rear first to do some assassin plays and whatever. You just go, okay, Dismal, my guy, maybe Ripple Banshee, can now not be retired anymore. And just like that, that basically wins you the game. Because now they attack with Vanguard, okay, pop something from your own field and their loop falls apart. That's why we're running the 1 Dismal. Also, if you're not running against DI, you can always flip this off Nora to get your Cray Elemental count higher, so your tier can actually CC more. Then we run 1 Agleam. You could also run a Ractome. It does the same thing. Once again, it's a Cray Elemental, so you can flip it off your Nora to then have a higher Cray Element count, so you can tier it. Or, and this is what it's actually in the deck for, you can discard your Ghost Ship or your Skull Dragon, stuff like that, to get it out of your hand, get some better pieces, and that way make your hand slightly less bricky as it could be. Finally, to Nora, this card is insane. Let's just reuse Chappie, gets huge, can cheat out PGs. It's just insane. I don't really know what to tell you about that. Finally, we have our Protects, and yes, we do in fact go into Protect 2 sometimes. This marker gets so much shit, and it really shouldn't. Like, in Premium, Protect 2 can be an option. Not always, mostly go Protect 1. But let's say you're going up against Luard. Your PGs are -3 for all their attacks because of Morfessa. So PGs just suck ass. If they run Drackhard or Claret, they can't retire your interceptors that well anyway. So you can literally get Protect 2, revive a Columbard into this. You can intercept with it, which means you are not going -2 for an attack, you're only going -1. That's something you were going to revive anyway, and then next turn you can revive it back again. And so this is just an endless value engine. It also gets bigger and bigger the more you rewrite. Beyond that, you can also go up against something like Gold Paladin, where all of their attacks are relatively small, or they go Providence Angel, meaning you can only PG once anyway, and then it's way better to have a Protect 2, which is just a much easier guard. Beyond that, a deck like Nubatama also exists, so if they're gonna be Jammy-oing, you really don't want to hoard these PGs either, because again, you're gonna be on 4 cards or 6 cards, and you don't want to -2 for one attack. You're gonna have to throw stuff away, so you might as well just get the endless value of it. So that's where you would be using these Protecty boys. Being able to use both is definitely a useful skill to have. So that was all. Hope you found this interesting. If you did, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, very, very important. You can pick up this playmat at the link in the description, as well as beautiful masks. If you need any cards, Claret cards is for EU. I have a link to TCG Player for US that also supports the channel. Whenever you use that link, that would be appreciated. I will see you soon. Ciao.